Primary education caters to children between the ages of 4 and 11. Primary levels start with reception class, ages 4 and 5, up to year 6, ages 10 and 11. Some primary schools have attached nursery units for 3 and 4-year-olds. Some primary schools are split up into an infant school, up to year 2, and a junior school, from year 3 up to year 6. These are usually separate schools on the same site. The national curriculum divides education up into key stages of learning. In the primary years, these are the early years in reception class, a stage which started in preschool, Key Stage 1 for years 1 and 2, and Key Stage 2 for years 3 to 6. The structure may also vary in some parts of England. Primary education may be split into first or lower schools for children age 5 to 8 or 9, and middle schools for children age 9 to 11, or even up to 13. They will still follow the national curriculum. So at what age do children start full-time education? There is an eligible age and a compulsory age. Children are eligible to start the September following their 4th birthday. This means they would start in reception class, the first official year of primary school. However, by law, children only have to start full-time education the term immediately after their 5th birthday. Depending on their birth date, this means they will begin in reception class or year 1. So although the majority of children begin their education by taking up a reception place at the age of 4, full-time education does not have to begin before age 5 if you feel your child is not ready for first-term reception. You do have options if you feel your child is not ready for full-time education at age 4. First, you can defer your reception place to the spring or summer term. Second, you can request a part-time arrangement in reception. Third, if your child is born in the summer, you can miss reception and start in year 1. At the moment, you typically cannot postpone reception by an entire year, and so a child would have to start in year 1 after age 5. Do check school and council policies. Let's take a look at an example. Meet Jill, Jack, and Jane. They all go to nursery school together and will turn 4 years old by the 31st of August that year. Since Jill turns 4 in September, she is the oldest in class. Jack turns 4 in January, so he is in the middle, and Jane will only turn 4 in August, making her the youngest in class. So when do they start primary school? Since they will all be age 4 by the 31st of August, they are all entitled to start reception class in September if they wish. However, remember that by law, you only have to start full-time school the term after your 5th birthday. Jill turns 5 in September, so she can defer her start until the January spring term. Jack turns 5 in January, so he can defer his start until the April summer term. Since Jane only turns 5 in August, she can skip reception and begin in year 1. If Jane doesn't want to completely miss out on reception, she can also choose to start reception in either the January or April terms. Remember to check school policies and also ask about the option of part-time education before age 5. Now let's take a look at the type of primary school providers. There are an increasing number of schools in England, so it can be difficult to distinguish between them. Ultimately, you need to do your research and find what's best for your child. The most common types of primary schools are maintained schools, which are state schools, academies, and independent schools, which are private. Maintained schools and academies are both state-funded and free, but maintained schools are the only schools controlled by the local authority of your council. Independent schools charge fees and have complete autonomy from the state. Maintained schools follow the state's national curriculum, whilst academies and independent schools can diverge and go beyond the curriculum. Academies do, however, have to follow some basic admission criteria and curriculum requirements. Independent schools are the only schools allowed to be academically selective. There are 4 types of maintained schools: community, foundation and trusts, voluntary aided, and voluntary controlled. 3 types of academies: sponsored academies, academy converters and free schools, and a whole variety of independent schools. Maintained schools are state schools and all very similar. What distinguishes them is mainly who owns the land and buildings and who is in charge of employing staff and setting the admission criteria. Community schools are completely controlled by the local authority, which owns the land and buildings as well as employs the staff and sets admission criteria. Foundation and trusts, on the other hand, are run by their own governing body, which in this case owns the land and buildings as well as employs their own staff and sets admission criteria. Voluntary aided and voluntary controlled schools are often religious or faith schools, whose land and buildings are both owned by charitable foundations or religious organizations. What sets them apart is whilst the governing body employs the staff and sets admission criteria in voluntary aided schools, it is the local authority who does this for voluntary controlled schools. Remember that academies all get their funding from central government but are free from local authority control. Sponsored academies are typically existing underperforming state schools who have been given to a new provider in order to raise the standards of education. They can be set up by a business or any other type of sponsor, often in partnership with the government. Academy converters, on the other hand, are usually existing high-performing state schools who convert to academy status in order to gain autonomy from the local authority. They are set up by existing local authority state schools. Lastly, free schools are also established as academies, but are normally brand new schools rather than existing schools, whose need must be driven by parental demand. They are set up by people in the community, such as teachers, parents, or charities. All three academy types should be run as not-for-profit charities, and must broadly stick to some admission criteria and curriculum state requirements. Finally, you can choose from a variety of independent schools. Independent, private, public, and preparatory schools all mean the same thing. Different terms exist due to historical reasons. They are fee-paying for-profit schools, and almost always the most expensive option. They are often chosen to help prepare children for entry into independent senior schools. Some independent or prep schools will only cover ages from 7 or 8 up until 11 or 13, whilst many offer pre-prep education for ages 5 to 7. Pre-prep and prep education is equivalent to the primary stages of the state sector.